I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. On today's show, we're back with 5 USMNT questions that have been on my mind this week. We'll break down the weekend for U.S. internationals, who stood out and who didn't, get into the toughest roster calls Mauricio Pochettino still has to make, and preview the final weekend of the English Championship. Plus, a few other things to watch this week in MLS and abroad. To help me today, Larry Henry Jr. is back on the show. Larry is the managing editor for SBI Soccer. Larry, welcome to the show. Let's start with performances over the past week. Who's a U.S. international that stood out to you?
Yeah, first off, Frank, thanks for always having me. One performance I want to look at is Ricardo Pepi. Obviously, PSV's kind of club schedule kind of got like shifted around a little bit. So they had a match on Thursday of last week, and they didn't play over the weekend. So I'm going to include this performance over the past week. But him being able to get 2 goals in that win over PEC's Wool 6-1. I thought that was great for him. It was his first multi-goal performance since September, so he'd really been kind of like itching for that. We've seen some more goals out of him in the calendar year. I know he missed some time, but he's been able to kind of pick up where he left off. And him getting 2 really good goals, both headers, both conveniently. The assist went to Esmir Bazraktarovic, the former U.S. youth national team player who had 1 cap for the senior team before he switched his allegiance to Bosnia. But yeah, I thought it was a really good performance from Pepi. It's crucial for him, I think, over the next few weeks, the final weeks of PSV season, to, obviously stay fit, stay healthy, but pick up some goals as well, get some confidence going. It seems like everybody in that striker pool right now for the U.S. men's national team is kind of firing on all cylinders. I know Haji Wright just had a goal pretty recently. Folarin Balogun had that really, long streak where he was scoring every week for Monaco. And Pepi has started to pick up some goals again. So it's going to make Mauricio Pochettino's decision on who will be the starting number 9 a little more difficult as we go into May. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight Pepi's performance. I thought he was our player of the week at SBI.
Yeah, it's amazing how many, when you consider all the time he's missed this season, the fact that he hasn't even started a lot of matches when he was healthy, it's amazing the number of goals he has. I mean, what is he up to, like 15, 16 goals for the season or something like that? And that's, part-time, so he missed a lot of time, but when he plays, he's just really banging them in. And so really happy to see Pepi healthy, scoring goals, and, leaving little doubt that, there was a time before Ajiman's injury that some of us were talking about if Pochettino only brings 3 strikers to the World Cup, that Pepi could potentially get left off. There were some doubts, maybe a month ago, but no doubts, right now. The guy I picked out was Alex Freeman. He's a guy I've become a big fan of, over the past year. He got his first start for Villarreal in their 2-1 win against Celta Vigo. He went the full 90 minutes. And I'm going to pull some stats from your tweet, Larry, that you put out. 96% passing completion rate. He was 50 of 52 on passes. Perfect 5 of 5 in duels. 2 interceptions, 6 clearances, 2 dribbles. I didn't get a chance to watch the match, but from what everything I've heard, the feedback online was that he, took advantage of this first opportunity to start, and he shined, in the match. And normally Santiago Marinho starts in his place. He was injured, so this was just a opportunity that came Freeman's way, and he took advantage of it. And sometimes that's how things change. A player gets injured, the new guy comes in, puts in a standout performance, and then never looks back. So it'll be interesting to see this weekend what happens with Villarreal. I don't know what Mourinho's injury status is, But I think Freeman obviously proved to the club that you can count on me just to start matches. And I was really, really happy to see that because of the lack of the minutes he had seen, thus far at Villarreal.
Yeah, and Frank, one thing to add about that as well. I mean, Villarreal's sitting third in La Liga, 15 points clear of fifth place, which would be like for that final in that race for the automatic Champions League spot. So they're kind of in a position right now where they can't really move really up or down, barring like a major. If they lose the last five games and fifth place wins the last five games, then they might be in trouble. I don't see that happening. So I think that this is and again, like Ricardo Pepi, in terms of making up the minutes here and racking up as much as he can before the next USMNT window. This is a great chance for Freeman as well to potentially get five more starts under his belt before decision time for Pochettino.
Yeah. So you're telling me that it's very likely Freeman's going to be playing Champions League football next
Yep.
year.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Right now, I mean, obviously, looking in La Liga right now, I mean, Barcelona gonna on the way to clinching the league, 9 points or 11 points clear, excuse me, of Real Madrid. Villarreal 65 points in third place. Atletico Madrid fourth with 60. So those two can still shuffle up and down, but they're both automatic Champions League spots. Real Betis is in fifth with 50 points. So again, Villarreal would have to lose five. Betis would have to win five. And even at that, I mean, Villarreal has more wins than Betis does. They have a much superior goal differential. So yes, this is another name already for next year's Champions League that we can already start to write in for our Americans abroad.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because, Freeman's going to have a full off season, a full, preseason, to prepare, hopefully win that starting spot. And then it would be just, man, I can't wait to see what he can do against some of the top clubs in the world, in Champions League. One other guy I want to mention real quick, Brian White scored 2 goals. Larry, did you know he's up to 8 goals now? He's only one back of the Golden Boot race in MLS. I didn't realize this guy was firing so solidly.
Yeah, he's Brian White has been very consistent for the Whitecaps over the past few seasons. Like you said, 8 goals already this season in 13 appearances, 24 last year. Pretty much every 5 out of the 6 years with the Whitecaps. Or 4 out of 5 prior to this year, he's had double-digit goals and he's hit 20 or more twice. So he's yeah. I mean, I think I wrote an article a couple weeks ago when Patrick Agyemang suffered his injury, and it was kind of looking at who could potentially maybe jump into that number 4 spot, and it was him or Josh Sargent, and it seems like both of them are finding their way in MLS right now.
Yeah. Yeah, White's a long shot, I think, but I mean, he's doing all he can do, which is score goals to try and get his name called. Okay, who did not have a great week?
Yeah, so one guy had, and maybe it isn't really particularly his fault in terms that he didn't play the full 90 minutes, but I didn't think Christian Pulisic had a great performance on the weekend. I know they had that 0-0 draw with Juventus. They're both fighting for top 4 in Serie A. Milan has kind of dipped down a little bit now. Napoli has overtaken them for second place. Milan's in third, Juventus is in fourth, and then you have Como and Roma, who are only 3 points back of Juventus. So things are going to get a little bit nervous over the next few weeks for both of these clubs. But for Pulisic, 16 matches now without a goal at club level. It's definitely worrying for him. He hasn't scored for Milan since December 28th. Obviously hasn't scored for the national team in a while. I know Max Allegri, we wrote up a story yesterday on SBI about Max Allegri's comments about Pulisic after the match, and he kind of said that it's wearing down on him a little bit. He's a little frustrated. He wants to deliver, he wants to contribute. Things aren't going particularly well for him right now. Luckily, he has again a couple matches left before the end of the season to try to turn things around. But yeah, it's not a good sign when for the U.S. when your leading star is gone several months without a goal.
Yeah. I've been thinking about Pulisic and wondering how much of his drought is kind of situational and due to kind of the coaches he's playing with, over at Milan. Allegri isn't known for playing beautiful attacking, football. From what I've always understood, he loved to win matches 1-0, and he's very successful at doing that. And he's playing Christian alongside Leao, in this two striker system, which obviously, he admitted in that press conference doesn't suit him. And so I wonder if Christian's just a little frustrated, with that whole situation. There was obviously the drama with Leao earlier this year when Leao wasn't happy that he passed him the ball in that one match. And then there's also with the USMNT, I always kind of question, has he really clicked with Mauricio Pochettino? Because, they had the dispute over the Gold Cup. It doesn't seem like Pochettino puts Pulisic in maybe the VIP status that maybe some other U.S. coaches have. He's always talking about how, not always talking about, but he made the comment last window about how we don't have any top 100 players. And, when he gets asked questions about why certain players were left off, he says things like, well, if you're going to ask him about Messi or Maradona or Mbappe or people like that, he clearly doesn't see Pulisic as like this, I don't know, in my mind, just superstar that a lot of us and a lot of other U.S. coaches have kind of talked to him, have kind of like talked about him in. And I also just wonder if Christian has been able to adjust to Pochettino's system. I mean, do you think that it comes into play at all, that he's just maybe not being utilized or he's struggling with the systems he's in, both for club and country?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid point. I do think at times with the national team, he does look a little bit out of sync. Kind of, whether it's with Pochettino or with the system they're playing. I know he kind of the last couple years has bounced around from being sort of like a left wing to dropping as a number 10 to kind of floating all around. I agree to your point. Allegri's teams don't usually play beautiful football. They again try to grind things out, and maybe that hampers the likes of Pulisic and Leao, and the fact they don't have a number 9 as well, consistent number 9. So, yeah, it is frustrating. I would think he would snap out of it at some point, just because he's a talented player, and we saw what he did in the first half of the season when he was, scoring goals left and right, and then it seems like, ever since pretty much from like December onwards, he's been, pretty quiet every week. I think he's only had 1 or 2 assists for Milan since then. The goal contributions have really dipped down. And, I think it's a confidence thing, right? I mean, you go that many matches without scoring, it's going to hurt the confidence. So, I mean, again, luckily for him, he's still got some matches to go, and they're going to be meaningful matches because, Milan hasn't clinched the top 4 spot yet. They could potentially drop out. They could potentially fall out of the European places with how many teams are kind of stacked in there at the moment. So they're going to need him, and I think he's going to need a strong end of the season to really, help them solidify Champions League football, but also get his confidence and form right before the World Cup.
Yeah, that'd be pretty catastrophic if they miss out on qualifying for Champions League, again this year. Okay, well, speaking of Pochettino, I'm always, we're about a month away now from learning what his final roster is going to look like. And, I'm always thinking about these like kind of bubble spots and these decisions he has to make. At this point, we're, with about 1 month remaining before, he names the roster. What do you think is his most, what do you think is the decision he's most uncertain about right now regarding the roster?
I think, again, going back to just players, one player I think that is very, very on the bubble right now, and it's a guy that we've talked about, for the past year, and that's Gio Reyna. And, I know we've talked about it before where, does he deserve a spot on the national team? I know Pochettino has previously said about, it kind of doesn't matter what he's doing at club level. For us, he's going to be important. He's a game changer. He can make things happen. I find that hard to believe. I just don't see how you would drop, other midfielders that, are more deserving maybe of a spot right now, like an Aiden Morris or a Christian Roldan or a Sebastian Berhalter or even like a Johnny Cardoso for a guy that like Gio Reyna, who has only made 17 appearances this season. I know he came off the bench on the weekend. He played 13 minutes. It seems like he's just really been a substitute for this team since he's joined. In the month of April, he played 36 minutes. He played in both of the friendlies in March. But then prior to that, he hadn't played since January 17th against Hamburg. So I just find it hard that they're going to bring a guy like Reyna in who hasn't really done much in his first season, with Gladbach. Hasn't really done too much at club level since the 2022-23 season for Dortmund. It's tough because I really like Gio Reyna as a player. I think he's creative, and when he's full of confidence, I think he's an undroppable player at times. But it's just hard to see him. A guy like Aiden Morris, who's played 40 plus appearances in the championship, or Johnny Cardoso, who's come back from some injuries to play in the Champions League and play big minutes for Atletico. Berhalter's playing week in and week out. Rodan's playing week in and week out. Gio Reyna hasn't. So I just don't know how you bring him in at this stage, given the fact that he's played, 500 minutes maybe this season?
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting that you're comparing him to guys like Cardoso, or I guess saying he's competing with guys like Cardoso, Morris. I think of him competing more against guys like I have a little note here on my sheet that says, I think of these four players, only two of them will make it. Gio Reyna, Brennan Aronson, Diego Luna, and Alex Zendejas. So I think of him more in that group of like attacking like midfielders. And when I think about those four guys that I just named, I have Reyna ranked number 4 in terms of guys I'd bring in. I'd bring Aronson, Luna, and Zendejas all in over him.
I do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and the players that you mentioned, Cardoso, Morris, I'd bring them over him as well. I don't see how this guy can make the roster based on what he's done, over the last year.
Yeah, and I just don't, too, like if again, I kind of look at things a little differently where I might just pair all the midfielders together. I know it's different than that, right? There's the holding mids and the attacking mids. But, if I'm thinking of the World Cup, right, and you need, attacking guys to maybe come off the bench or potentially even start a game, I'm starting all your options over Reyna as well, because you want guys that are confident, that are in good form, that can change a game. And I just don't know how Gio Reyna can do that right now, because he hasn't been playing. He's playing 30 minutes a month. We all kind of thought that this move for him would be, maybe the spark for him to get back on track, and it's been anything but that. He's linked up with Joe Scally. They obviously have a history together with New York City FC, and both being in the Bundesliga, and Scally's playing week in and week out. I know it's different positions, but Reyna, I mean, it's got to be very difficult for Reyna right now in terms of when am I going to get my chance? When am I going to turn things around?
Yeah. Well, he's running out of time, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. But it's going to be really interesting to see where Pochettino goes with that decision. In the next month or so. Okay, let's look ahead now to some things we have coming up. The English Championship. We're coming up on the final weekend of the English Championship. And there's actually a match happening right now. I want to just alert everybody to that. Southampton and Ipswich Town are playing. I see Southampton's winning 2-1 in the 85th minute. So that's going to impact, because both of them are competing, for top 6 spots as well. So that's going to impact what we say here. But heading into this last weekend of the English Championship, what are you going to be watching for?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much touched on it. I have the score in the background, and like you said, Southampton's up. We'll see if that holds. But at this point, that would mean you'd have 4 teams on Saturday fighting for that second automatic spot. You'd have Ipswich Town, you'd have Millwall, Southampton, and Middlesbrough. And all these teams, no matter what, will be guaranteed at least a playoff spot. Ipswich can't fall out of the top 6, Millwall, Southampton, or Middlesbrough. It's really just them in their group. And then you have, Wrexham, Hull City, and Derby County, who will be then competing for that that last spot in the playoffs. And it'll be kind of some big matches, because you got Middlesbrough playing Wrexham, so they're 5th and 6th right now in the standings. That's not an easy game for Wrexham. You have Hull City's going to be playing Norwich City, and Norwich City's in 9th. Yes, they can't get in the playoffs, but they're going to want to end on a high note. And Derby County's in 8th. They probably have the easiest matchup against Sheffield United. So it might, that could be obviously interesting if they get in the playoffs and make a run at it. Could we see Patrick Agyemang in the Premier League next season? So that's what I'm going to be watching. Aidan Morris and Middlesbrough versus Wrexham. That's going to be a big match. We all know what Wrexham's about, and the ownership and the money that's been put into the team. Could they potentially go for 4 straight promotions, which is unheard of? So I'll be watching that. I'll also be keeping an eye on Coventry City against Watford, solely for the fact that Haji Wright is 1 goal away from tying his career best for a season, which was 19. Coventry 92 points. They've already been promoted. Hats off to them. They've done outstanding this season. So we will see Haji Wright in the Premier League, which I think is awesome. So those are the 2 things I'm going to be looking at. Obviously, on the other end of the table, everything's pretty much decided. The 3 teams are going down, even though West Brom recently got deducted 2 points. They are safe. So that would have been interesting if they were, playing for something in their match, but they're not. So George Campbell, Daryl Dike, West Brom, they're safe. But yeah, so those matches I said, Middlesbrough, Wrexham, and then Coventry City and Watford will be the 2 I'm kind of bouncing on my TV on Saturday morning.
Yeah, even though Patrick Agyemang, isn't playing, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that Derby County result. I mean, because think about this scenario. Let's say Derby County wins, makes it into the promotion playoffs and somehow finds a way to win and to win. You smiling because you know where I'm going with this, right? Let's say it's possible that 3 of the top 4 USMNT strikers could be playing in the Premier League next season. Haji Wright's already there with Coventry City. Patrick Agyemang could win promotion. We'll see. We'll see in the coming weeks. But he could be there with Derby County when he comes back from injury. Of course, Ricardo Pepi has long been, linked and rumored to this move to Fulham, which looks like it's almost happened a couple of times. But you kind of assume that's going to happen this summer. So those 3 guys could all be playing in the Premier League, which would be amazing for the U.S. men's national team. 3 of your top strikers playing Premier League football.
Yep. I'm also smiling too, because as we just broke down the whole scenario, Ipswich has tied it up, so it's 2-2 now. But
okay,
that doesn't officially guarantee Ipswich the second place spot. Ipswich can only, guarantee promotion tonight if they pull out the win. Which, well, even at that, it's still, Millwall has to win. There's a whole bunch of scenarios, but I'm also smiling at the fact because, now that you mention it, if Ipswich does not pull out this result and they do lose on Saturday and Middlesbrough sneaks up in that automatic spot and Derby County somehow sneaks into the playoffs, I mean, we could potentially have a Haji Wright, Aidan Morris, Patrick Agyemang scenario where all of them go up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because
it's
if Ipswich Town doesn't win, if they end up tying, they'll be at 81 points, Middlesbrough 79. So Middlesbrough could still earn that automatic promotion bid, which would be awesome to see Aiden Morris play in the Premier League.
there's going to be, like I said, they always make the joke that you always used to see. Was it back in the day? You'd see the teams getting relegated or promoted, and they'd have the little hand radios, and they'd be listening to all the scores at all the grounds. That's gonna be us on Saturday if this result hangs on, and we're gonna be trying to see who goes where in terms of the automatic spots. But it's,
Yeah.
it's it's cool. I love the championship. I'm always a big fan of obviously the Premier League and the championship and the lower leagues in England. I love the promotion relegation aspect, and hopefully we have that here someday in the US. But yeah, it's cool to see. It does stink though as a neutral kind of to this, because in my eyes I don't really mind who goes up, but a lot of people will be biting their nails on Saturday. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the watching the English Championship this time of year to me is one of the most fun things to watch in global football. So I can't wait to see this weekend what happens and then what happens in the promotion playoffs. Okay, last thing I want to ask you about. Besides the English Championship, what's something else you'll be watching for in this coming week or weekend involving U.S. internationals, either in MLS or overseas?
Yeah, so the one main thing, other than the championship and keeping eyes on the Premier League as well, will be the Serie B title race in Italy, because we have Gianluca Buzio and Venezia are currently top of the table, 78 points. And similar to the championship, two teams automatically get promoted from the second division in Italy, and then 3 through 8 go into a playoff, and eventually you'll get one team out of that gets promoted. Right now, you have Venezia on 78 points, Monza on 75, and Frosinone on 75. And all these teams have 2 matches left. Venezia can clinch their spot pretty much with a win, and then if results go elsewhere between the other two teams, and they're playing last place Spezia on the road, and Spezia are in a relegation battle themselves, they can still get out of it with a pair of wins. So as much as people might think, the first place team's playing the last place team, they're going to roll right through them. I think it's going to be a little tougher. It's going to be a fun watch. Buzio's had a really outstanding season for Venezia. He signed a contract extension that'll take him through the 2027-28 season. So he's already kind of committing his future to the club. Could he this will be his second promotion with the club if they do seal it. So I think that's what I'll be watching. I'll be watching Ligue 1 as well in France. That title race there has been kind of back and forth between PSG and Lens, but you also have Lyon, Tanner Tessman in third place. You have Tim Weah in Marseille in sixth place, and then you have Valerian Balogun in Monaco in seventh place. So you have Americans that are fighting for Champions League spots, Europa League spots, and Conference League spots as well. So those will be the two kind of other things that I'm going to be having the TV on at this weekend.
Yeah, and I'll just add for this week, Chris Richards is playing in the Europa Conference League semifinal first leg on Thursday. Johnny Cardoso in the Champions League semifinal against Arsenal first leg on Wednesday. I'm looking to see, does Alex Freeman get another start with Villarreal? How does he perform there? But speaking of Gio Reyna, I'm also kind of tuning into his match this weekend. So Gladbach is playing Dortmund this weekend. So Gio's going to get a chance at his old club, maybe. I'm just like, if they want to throw him a bone, this is the match to do it, And so I don't think they will. I mean, Gladbach still hasn't secured, if you look at the math, they could still be relegated or end up in the relegation playoffs themselves. They haven't secured their spot to stay in the Bundesliga next year. So I don't see the coaches, giving out too many favors. They're going to be trying to win the match. But maybe you think, okay, this guy, we can light a fire under him by like letting him play against Dortmund and seeing what he can do. But then the other thing I'll add is that Gladbach only has 3 matches left. The Bundesliga ends a little earlier. And so anybody who's thinking, oh, maybe if Gio Reyna gets on this run at the end of the season and starts playing really well and he's going to like get himself into the World Cup roster or secure his spot. No, that's over. I mean, they have 3 matches left. His season is going to be over on May 16th in like 2.5 weeks. So the idea of like somehow he's going to all of a sudden like start performing for Gladbach isn't going to happen. He's not going to go on some run, but maybe if they give him a shot against Dortmund, maybe he can have a good game and get at least a couple good matches under his belt. I don't see it happening because we've been saying maybe with him for a long time now, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on that match just to see if he gets a start and if he does, what he can do against his old club.
And actually, Frank, but one last thing with that match, Mathis Albert, the young U.S. youth national team player who made his first team debut for Dortmund last week, youngest, breaking Gio Reyna's record for the youngest American to make his debut in the Bundesliga, was pretty cool to see. Obviously, we saw him at the U17 World Cup with Kevin Sullivan, and those two seem to be the potential future stars for the national team. So I'm curious to see if they if he gets some more playing time over the next 3 matches as well.
Yeah. So we could have 3 Americans keep an eye on, in that match. You throw in Joe Scally as well. Okay, Larry, I'll just add, I just saw that Southampton-Ipswich Town match finished up. 2-2 is the result. So Aidan Morris and Middlesbrough do still have a chance to win automatic promotion this weekend. Good luck to him. And it'll be exciting to check that out. Okay, Larry, I will make sure and put links in the show notes to your X account, which is at lhenry019, and also to your work at SBI Soccer. Thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Thanks a lot, Frank. Appreciate you having me, and we'll do it again soon.
We most certainly will. And thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or that follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or somewhere else. Thank you so much. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on X at FrankGarza007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.